Welcome to the Hogsty, a brand new startup offshoot of Hogsty Enterprises, itself a subsidiary of football news aggregator Hogsty Radio Communications Network, doing business as the Hogsty Podcast. Now that my contractually obligated intros are done, let's talk a little Redskins Cardinals. It's kind of a must-win for Arizona, pretty darn close for Washington as well. So don't go away. We are joined tonight by another new contributor. It's the Hogsty, and it's coming up next. We'll see you then.
Welcome to the Hogsty. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Hey, howdy, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name's Sean Conti. I'm jazzed up tonight, ready to rock. What's up, Alex?
Well, I was excited today to see in the presser that Kirk Cousins is really into Broadway-style musicals. If only there was somebody on our show who has a connection at the Kennedy Center or is maybe married to someone at the Kennedy Center and might be able to score him some tickets at some point and become Kirk Cousins' best friend.
Oh my gosh, get him on the show. Yeah, right? We got to play to this love of musical theater.
Oh, they're not going to give me a call if we get Kirk Cousins and don't tell them. Yeah, they won't call me about that one.
Right.
That's, of course, the voice of Steve Thomas you're hearing. What's up, Steve? How you doing, man?
I'm very excited that all of a sudden we have all these business entities with Hogsty Enterprises and, all sorts of other things. And, of course, being the business attorney here, I'm shocked that we have those, and I didn't form them. So I'm glad somebody did my job for me.
Well, we had to form in Delaware for, tax reasons, Steve.
If at any point I get us into trouble with something I say, Steve, you just let us know. You got to rein me in. I'm like a wild stallion, man. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined tonight by another special contributor. His name's Chris Larry. A select few of you will definitely know his name, some of our core fans there, so special shout out. This guy's a goldmine for football analysis, so we're very excited to have him on the show for this preview episode. What's up, Chris, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, Sean. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. First time, long time.
Yeah, Chris I've known Chris through social media for about a decade. And I think he's one of the first people who ever listened to our show because I posted it on Facebook, and he was one of the few people to listen and respond and tell me that he liked it. So, excited to have Chris here.
Yeah, man. Hey, Chris, it's excited. It's great to have you here. And for those of you, what Alex is talking about here is this core group where with Chris and Alex especially were posters on the Washington Post Insider blog, and I was there a little later, but Chris is one of the old guard guys from the Insider, and we're excited to have him.
Back when social media was still a new thing and not just people, shouting racist things at each other.
Yeah. It's certainly evolved into now.
And to hear you say a decade, Alex, is frightening. But
yeah,
here we are.
You do the math, man. It's been about
4 coaches ago.
Yeah.
Well, here we'll get your mind off that somewhat sad statistic there. Maybe we'll talk about some better ones here. So we got a matchup against Arizona this week, guys. This is kind of a must-win for Arizona. They're sitting there with 4 wins. So if they're going to be competing for one of those wild card spots, they need to start winning starting next week. So start a little offense, you guys. What do you think? What do we have in store?
Well, I think if we want to talk about our offense versus their defense,
Yes, sir.
I'm more worried about our injuries than I am anything else, at least. Jordan Reed is still pretty badly hurt, it sounds like, with his shoulder. They were saying earlier in the week he only had about 30% motion. And now, he played last week with that hurt shoulder, but sometimes, you injure something, the adrenaline's there, you'll play through it.
Right.
It's that next week when you really start to feel it and you look at, your skin is all the wrong purple and blue colors.
All the wrong things are happening.
Yeah. So I'm really worried about injuries first and foremost when it comes to our offense.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Go ahead.
I'm not too worried about the injuries this week, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that, they've had, it's going to be 10 days off, and granted we have a travel day in there, but
Right.
I think, this time of year everybody's going to be, bumped and bruised, but there's plenty of recovery time.
Sure.
But from the injury standpoint, really the only serious injury we have is Reed.
Yeah.
He didn't practice today. He still got the shoulder. A little bit on today is Wednesday. Unknown what's going to happen with him. Anthony Lanier didn't practice, but we can do without Anthony Lanier. Everybody else is just nicks and bruises.
That's pretty important, Steve.
Yeah, it's a linchpin if I ever heard one.
But really and truly, Jordan Reed's the only one, so I'm not too worried about that. I mean, the issue with what's that?
Well, I was going to say it's a key one, and I think they probably, on the whole, to your point, are a little more banged up than we are. I don't know if you have numbers or stats on them, but they've been dealing with the rest.
Oh, I do. Yeah, their injuries are just atrocious. I'll only read a few of them because the list is too long.
Yeah.
List of people who are banged up: Larry Fitzgerald, Malcolm Floyd, Marcus Golden, Tyrann Mathieu, the linebacker Minter. Palmer missed practice today. It didn't look like it was injury, but he didn't practice. And most importantly, Peterson, the cornerback Peterson, all pro, one of the best corners in the game. He's got a knee. Right. He didn't practice today. He may or may not play on Sunday. So we'll see. But that is a big injury.
Yeah, no, huge news for our receivers.
Yeah. So the thing I'd be worried about, even if Reed plays, is the one thing that the Cardinals do, especially in the secondary, is hit and hit hard. So I would be worried. I would guess he goes ahead and gives it a run, especially with sort of battling against his reputation. But I'd hate to see him go out there and get smacked around and have it be worse.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even if he's still banged up, you got to be cautious to even put him out there. I know everybody's banged up at this point in the season, but yeah, I mean, you got to be careful, especially with somebody like him. Wrap him in bubble wrap,
man. But this game, we need to win this game, and you're talking about an Arizona defense that's one of the probably the best pass defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
And one of the best defenses overall, but especially listen to some of these rankings. First in total yards surrendered, first in yards per game surrendered, first in yards per play, second in passing yards, third in passing yards per attempt. These guys are for real. They're serious. They get a lot of turnovers. They've had
a lot of
turnovers a lot of sacks, a lot of turnovers. These guys are for real. And the most telling stat, really, to me, is that the number of passing yards these guys give out. We pass for a lot of yards. They don't give up passing yards. The Patriots had 257 yards passing. That's the high on the year against this team.
Wow.
This is serious, and this is a game where we really are going to need a run game to click. They're not quite as good in the run game. 9th in yards, 6th in rushing yards per attempt. Still outstanding, but if there's a weakness, that's it.
I mean, those are impressive.
We're just not going to be able to have.
I mean, is it just that their offense hasn't been getting it done then, I assume?
Well, if we want to go through this issue...
We can go through the stats later, I think, on their offense, really. But, I mean, so is that kind of what we're looking at, or is teams just been getting a short field? It's
Palmer is the issue. Carson Palmer is the issue with the Cardinals.
All right.
From our perspective, it's more of the same. We've seen the same thing, week after week after week. We pass for a lot of yards. We're 29th in red zone percentage.
Right.
Same thing happened against the Cowboys. On Thanksgiving Day. Pass for a bunch of yards, didn't score, didn't get a lot of rushing yards. It's the same thing. It's game after game. We have to figure out how to put the ball in the end zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the stats you called out, I think there's going to be a lot more importance on the running game, and guys like Calais, I think that's how you say his first name, Campbell. And Rucker, he deserves mention just because his first name is Frosty. That's a true story, by the way. Look it up. First name's Frosty. Those guys are actually pretty good at creating a lot of disruption for running backs. So I think this is going to be a tough one for Rob. But it's not, the prognosis isn't that much better in the passing game, kind of like you pointed out. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, there's the thing that mainly worries me, and we'll touch on this a little bit when we flip sides of the field here, is that we're really going strength against strength. Our passing game versus their pass defense.
Right.
Great.
And I think when you look at when we switch offense and defense, we'll see where I'm nervous about where we actually don't match up well, strength versus weakness. So That's what makes me deeply worried. But the one positive thing is, we've done fairly well against some pretty good defenses this year. I think Minnesota is one that still stacks up as pretty darn tough. And so we've actually kind of showed our mettle against some good defenses. And who knows, maybe the law of averages helps us out when we some of those touchdowns start rolling in, because it feels almost, supernaturally off balance our yards per touchdown type ratio. So maybe that's going to have to be the key this week, I think, is punching a few of those in.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think this Arizona defense is kind of a step up from any other defense we've played. I think this is the top one we faced this year. I kind of thought Minnesota was relying too much on turnovers. These guys just stop people.
Yeah,
so I can't see.
What about compared to like when we played Baltimore? Baltimore, historically a good defense, although we know not as great as past years. But when we played them, when we played them, they played us pretty tough on defense. Are you thinking it's gonna be that kind of situation?
I think they'll be better.
Okay.
These guys do not. These guys. Let's do this. In games in 2016, here's the passing yards given up. Now, this is net yards, okay? This means passing yards minus sacks. It just happens to be able to have handy. 257, 221, 89, 247, 135, 197, 205, 208, 198, 145, and 244 against the Falcons last week, which is a high-flying offense.
Those are like 1980s passing numbers.
Well, they're doing it by generating a lot of pressure, sacking the quarterback a lot. This guy, Marcus Golden and Chandler Jones, they've got like 7 and 8 sacks apiece. They're, I think, ranked second in the league for sacks. Jones was that splashy acquisition that came from New England over the offseason, if you caught that. They kind of lucked into that. Those two guys have done a lot of good work. Yeah, I mean, this is not, to Chris's point, this is a strength against strength situation. We need big games from Garcon. We need a big game from Crowder. He's got to keep doing his best stud impression. These guys got to show up.
Rob Kelly.
Yeah,
we need Rob Kelly to do. I mean, I just don't think we can rely on Kirk Cousins to pass for 350 yards this week. I just don't see that happening, and there's no history of it with offenses as good or better than ours this year. Right. And by the way, the New England game was without Tom Brady. That was when Tom Brady was suspended, just incidentally. It should be said.
That is a big point.
Yeah, no, I mean, you gotta factor that in every time. Yeah. Look, maybe I think we could all agree on this. Hopkins, make your goddamn field goals this week.
It's indoors.
For the love of God.
Yeah. He can kick a ball 75 yards outside, but once you put him inside and there's no wind or nothing, he just doesn't feel natural or something.
Well, I just think as long as there's not a star exploding, in his face, he might do better.
No supernovas.
Or if we have a coach that decides maybe not to go for a field goal that's 55 yards, his max into the sun.
That might be a fair point as well. Yeah, he wasn't exactly bailed out by the coaching staff this week, getting nice by Jay Gruden himself.
But he hasn't had a good year. He really hasn't.
No.
And you're right to bring it up, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if it's time to start trying to move on from him yet. I'm always hesitant to be that reactionary about a kicker. They all go through this, but it has not.
Well, think about the number of Redskin kickers. Think about the number of Redskin kickers that we cut that are still doing well in the NFL.
I know, and you don't want to be another David Akers, and you got to have some patience with these guys. It's not like he's missing everything.
Yeah, no, we love the Duster. Frankly, don't get me wrong, but he's let us down a little bit.
We love the Duster. I hate to root for a guy to get cut who we actually know. That would be a bummer. We haven't had that happen yet.
Silas Reed. Excuse me. I had something in my throat.
He hasn't been cut.
No, he's still on the team. He's just suspended forever.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. That's important, a distinction. Okay. So I think we all kind of agree. This is going to be a tough matchup for our offense. Hopefully we can pull it together. But, at least statistics-wise, it's not matched up in our favor. It's not a favorable matchup for Kirk and Co. So hopefully they can put it together. If you all want to flip on over to the old defense there, let's do it. Plenty to talk about there. Johnson, this is their running back that's kicking ass recently. We can talk, of course, about Mr. Fitzgerald and Palmer himself. Where do you guys want to start?
Let's start with this. Okay. 458 pass attempts on the year. That's the most in the NFL.
The quarterback
throwing said passes is only completing 60.9% of his passes and only has an 83.3 quarterback rating. So what we have here is a very inefficient passing offense, and that is why they're not scoring enough points. They're only 20th in points despite all this passes.
Wow.
They're not relying on David Johnson. David Johnson is a nightmare, and he's a beast.
Right.
Yeah,
He's a running back that's going to run all over us, and he catches a ton of passes. Think 6, 7, 8
he
passes.
He is a Marshall Faulk, Brian Westbrook in the making.
Yep.
Yeah, he's playing like the real deal. 55. That's for sure.
55 receptions on the year.
He scares the crap out of me this week, quite frankly. And this is their strength versus our weakness. This is where when I look at the total game and start to look at strengths against weaknesses, this is the one that jumps right off the page at me. And I'm a Bruce Arians fan, but if he smartens up and maybe passes a little less and looks at some film and just decides let's ride our best player on offense, that has me shaking.
Yeah, I'm with you.
One thing.
I kind of, my feeling has always been, if you look at another team and they have a good running back and they have some way to get the ball out, passing it over the middle more, we're in trouble. Because if you want to draw a big red line down the middle of the field, that's our weak spot. So,
yeah,
that's what we're going to face. We're facing a dual threat receiving running back. He will be getting open versus our tight ends versus Kendall Fuller all day long in the passing game. He'll be getting, big runs off.
He's yet to rush for less than 100 yards in a game, I believe.
And he's
statistic. We're not going to be the team to stop that.
I believe he's had 400 yards, did you say, receiving, Steve? Is that where he's at? Something like that, right?
Well, he's got 613 yards receiving on the year, 921 yards. Yeah, and let's not forget 2 more points here. They happen to have some guy named Larry Fitzgerald you may have heard of. I've heard of. I don't know if you've heard his name. Yeah,
I've not heard of him. I hear rumors of some dude in a desert who's been really
rumors
good,
of a
but
dude
on a
in the
shitty
desert
team for a lot of times.
Rumors of a dude in the desert that's going to wear a gold jacket 5 years after he retires, and some guy named Malcolm Floyd, who's also a pretty talented receiver. And let's not pretend that our pass defense has been any good,
right?
Because it really, quite honestly, has. I mean, it's been okay. But they're 16th in yards, 22nd in passing yards per attempt, defense. So,
right.
And you got to
given up a ton of yards in pass.
And let's just remember about Fitzgerald that they like to put him where he's going to be best in a game-to-game situation. They're going to put him in the slot if they want to, which is where we've been getting gashed the last, the last year. Let's be honest. So you got to watch, especially out for him.
Yeah, he kind of rebooted his career a couple years ago by playing more in the slot. So that's just a place that's very comfortable for him. And am I hearing you all correctly that you don't have faith in Duke and Dante?
Ooh, who wants to take this one?
I have less faith in Kendall Fuller to stick with
Kendall
Fitzgerald.
Got to go. He's got to go.
I'm not done with him yet, but I think this year needs to be chalked up as a learning year at this point.
Take a seat, Rook.
Yeah. You got some reps in.
I think honestly,
and
I think Joe Barry needs to just let Josh Norman trail Larry Fitzgerald the entire game, including in the slot.
Yeah, probably.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, I don't know. They've got a couple weapons too. It's an inefficient pass offense, like you said, but they do have weapons, and you kind of can't pay too much attention to any one of them. They're also not getting bailed out very much by the guys up front, our defensive backs, so to speak. So that's a problem as well. So we got to talk about that too. Obviously,
you talked about earlier, Steve. Carson Palmer's numbers not great, but he still is a very good veteran quarterback. And there's a lot to be said for that 30-something quarterback who's not going to be making the rookie mistakes, even if he doesn't have the arm anymore. We saw it with Peyton Manning, not to say Carson Palmer's Peyton Manning, but they have the mental ability to still run an offense no matter what. And that's where you got to be nervous.
All right.
I still remember about a 52-year-old Boomer Esiason throwing about 6 to 7 touchdown passes in the game for the Cardinals against the Redskins way back in the day. So the cagey.
He might have had 500 yards in that game too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might have gotten close to 500 yards in that game we're talking about. But look, I mean, Palmer, he's having a bad year, no doubt. I mean, 26th in the NFL in quarterback rating, but he's a good enough player and he's a good enough vet that he could get hot. And he could all of a sudden have an old school Carson Palmer game, particularly against a team that's quite honestly weakened against defense. You let David Johnson get hot. You put Larry Fitzgerald in the slot against Kendall Fuller. Joe Barry doesn't adapt. All of a sudden they're going crazy. And that could happen. Let's hope it doesn't, but that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a little bit about what happened last week. We got completely obliterated along the D-line last week. We couldn't contend with their guys. Smith, Father Time himself, that's Jason Witten, Free, Martin. We really couldn't contend with anybody. They rushed for 160 at like 5 yards carry rate. It wasn't good. Prescott had all day. We can't do that again. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, and I think I think it all starts much like with Dallas. It all will start if we can stop them on the first drive. Maybe we get some momentum going our way. But I think I don't remember who it was. Somebody posted a stat where on that first drive, Dallas was getting 10 yards of play. If we do that, we're screwed.
But we kind of got our negative Nancy's happening right now. The one place I think we can
gloom and doom.
We can maybe make up a little difference is their offensive line is not that good and has been pretty beat up this year. And we're not horrible at rushing the passer, especially against weaker offensive lines. And you got a quarterback who's, planting oak roots with his feet. So if we can smack him in the mouth enough times and then not drop the gift interceptions that he'll give, that might be the road to success for us. So we can maybe take advantage of this line.
That's such a good point. He's been sacked like 32 times on the year. It's like, I think, the second most for a quarterback in the league, behind like human sack machine Andrew Luck, I think. So that's probably a great point. I mean, we can get pressure on Palmer. We can hit him in the face. That's a great point. That might be the way to do it.
And also the other thing is he throws a lot of interceptions. He has 11 on the year, which is a fairly good amount. He's had some fumbles. Also, I mean, Carson Palmer's been kind of a turnover machine. So if it goes south on him, yes. I mean, the negative Nancy thing comes in where, if they get rolling, they start to look like the Cardinals of old because our defense isn't up to snuff. That's when we're going to have problems. Particularly we're traveling. It's a long flight. It's in Phoenix. They're at home. We're on the West Coast. It has the possibility of going south.
Yeah. Another point to make about that line, they had 3 starter changes along the line, I think, heading into that Falcons game. 2 guys, I believe, that are now starting on that line are seeing basically their first NFL playing time, period. That's kind of a huge, I'm really glad that Chris made that point because that's kind of a huge thing to highlight. We could really get after them.
That is
the results. 28 sacks on the year.
Sorry, what
sacks on the year?
Oh, there you go. Exactly.
It does sort of feel like, is this the game where a defensive score is going to maybe, like a victory for us has a defensive score involved?
You can't ever count on that, No, I mean, let's hope.
You can't, but let's be honest, okay? Because once again, Chris kind of is hitting at the heart of it. We have not held a team to less than 20 points all year. We are not going to sit here. We cannot depend on Joe Barry to consistently stop a team to get 3 and outs. It's not going to happen. If it's going to happen for us on defense, if we're going to have a good defensive game, it probably speaks to stealing the ball, getting a turnover, because you can't just allow Joe Barry to sit back and try to rest on his laurels and hold a defense. I mean, it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened this year.
Can I maybe attempt to steer the Joe Barry suicide train back on the tracks a little bit?
No, I know he's everybody's to the bridge, my friend.
Because I know he's everybody's favorite. He's everybody's favorite punching bag. But Alex and I talked about this a little bit when we did the show last week.
Yeah.
His game plans have gotten better. He's not as terrible. It's not as uninventive and just deathly uncreative as it was in the beginning. And I'd like to ask everybody who wants to run Barry out of town on the first Concord out here, what would you do differently with the poor personnel we have in the front 7? What would Vince Lombardi do with these bunch of street guys that we're starting, like Ziggy Hood and Cullen Jenkins and guys like that? what would a better coach do with those guys?
I know Alex is going to rip you apart right now, so I'm standing behind Alex, and I'm kind of being like, yeah, hit him. That's what I'm doing right now. Sorry, guys.
I would say that the first thing I would do to fix the front seven is actually put 7 people in the box instead of 6.
Heyo.
I mean...
Well, that's a good point.
I mean, of course, it's a great point. We are relying on either Kendall Fuller or maybe sometimes Sua Cravens, to be the third linebacker, and they're not linebackers. They just aren't. Sua might be a linebacker someday, but he should be a strong safety. Sorry, not free safety. And when you constantly are putting 6 guys in a box and they're all undersized. We're using the hybrid linebackers still as defensive ends, and then we're using Compton and Foster, who I think we all accept they're just a guy kind of linebackers on the inside of that thing. Yeah. We're not putting enough beef in the middle. I mean, you can't stop the run without the beef.
Yeah. If anyone's sitting here telling you that next season they aren't targeting a defensive lineman or a linebacker or maybe a safety, they are foolish people. They're just crazy.
Well, what do you think? There's not a lot of good defensive linemen in the first round, I don't think.
Well, don't rain on this parade. Fuck you.
I've started looking, and
can we please stop with the draft talk? We're in the middle of a playoff hunt. I don't really want to hear it.
Right, no, let's just. But it's fair to say these are our deficiencies. These are our obvious deficiencies. It has relevance to this game. We have problems up front, and that's your point, and it's a great point. Joe Barry can't necessarily be blamed for all the issues there up front. But
I would say a lot of this can fall on Scott. I think that most people would agree.
I don't mean to say he's been good, Barry. I just mean we have poor personnel, and that's not on Joe Barry. Mm-hmm. That's all my point is.
I actually think there's been a couple of games this year where he actually coached him up and had some schemes that actually probably were masking some deficiencies in a way that probably gutted them through some games. I'm sort of maybe a little bit on Steve's side. I mean, he's a tough guy to defend. You don't want to go. It's not like I ride with Joe Barry, but like I do actually think he has had some creativity at times this year where you really are masking some pretty deep deficiencies as we're discussing here in terms of talent.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think you're exactly right. And I get Alex's point. They didn't take my advice last week against Dallas and put 8 in the box to stop.
No, they kept on going with the traditional 2-4 look. And
well, are they going to fix that this week against Johnson?
No, because Joe Barry doesn't adjust his scheme for anything.
Well, you don't think so?
I think you're right, though. I think they have tried to mask. They have tried to hide some of the deficiencies. They do use Foster as a spy. They use Sua Cravens as a spy sometimes, and he did try to disguise some blitzes. They pulled a stunt last week, if you guys noticed that. So I think this is my point. He is doing it is more creative than it used to be.
It's more creative, but I just want to see more variation. I mean, okay, I get it. You don't necessarily have 3 good linebackers or 3 good defensive linemen, apparently, but you got to try something to. When it's a running down and you're still coming out with only 6 guys in the box, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, it just doesn't. You're not putting people in the best position.
Right.
I agree completely.
One thing is if you don't have to spy, Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, right? You're not worrying about having to spy. Would love to see Cravens on a couple blitz because if he can get a look, it's not like Palmer's getting out of his way. So I wonder.
That's true. He's a good blitzing safety linebacker, money backer, whatever his title is.
Yeah. Well, what else do we want to? Sorry, go ahead, Steve. If you have another thought, I was going to ask.
I do. Here's my sort of macro picture thought on this. David Johnson is the key, I think. Mm-hmm. If David Johnson gets rolling, there's going to be serious problems. It's going to open up everything else, and by rolling, that means he's going to get 6 or 7 catches a game. He's going to be averaging 5 yards a carry on the run game. If that happens, we're in serious trouble. If they can stop him and limit Carson Palmer's options, we'll be okay because Palmer hadn't been good this year. But you get David Johnson rolling, it's going to be trouble.
Yeah. Well, if we are all feeling confident we can go ahead and throw the gauntlet down and give our game predictions for this. Do we feel like we're ready for that step? We got to talk about Kirk's contract as well, but let's get this out of the way.
I'll go first. I've got a very pessimistic one ready to go, and I don't want Steve to steal my number magically like he somehow always does.
There you go. He does. He's a scheming little thief.
Yeah,
we're just of one brain, Alex.
Yeah. I got to put my tinfoil hat back on when we do the show. But I'm not feeling good about this game. I think that, the second half of the season was going to be the letdown, and I'm unfortunately thinking the Redskins lose this one close. 21-20 Redskins loss.
Okay. Well, Alex stole my prediction. I was going to exactly predict 21. No, I'm just kidding.
We knew it.
I think that this is unfortunate. I predicted this game to be lost at the beginning of the season. I think it's going to be lost this year. I think it's going to be something along the lines of 24-10.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Chris, we'll save you for last because you're the guest, and that means you're automatically the smartest person here on the Skype call. So I am a little gun-shy about calling wins, guys, because I've been wrong about that recently. Last week in particular was kind of a bummer. But I think we can do this. I certainly hear where you guys are coming from with a loss. And God, Steve, I don't even remember what I called for any of these games at the beginning of the year. That's hilarious.
Well, Sean,
I don't think we even want to keep
loss
those.
last week. I don't think you were on. Were you on the show last? You were with your dad,
weren't you? I did it in my weekly column, my friend.
Oh, in your column. Okay.
Blogstar.com. Click on the Blogstar. Thank you very much. But back to this game, yeah, I know this is not the best matchup for Kirk. I don't know what's going to happen with Fat Rob. I think we can win this. It's probably – we're not going to keep them from scoring like at least 3 touchdowns. That's my real prediction. I'm going to put that down. Joe Barry's not going to hold them to under 20 points. He hasn't really except for once this year. So they're going to get 21. I think we can beat that by a touchdown. I'm going to say 28-21 Redskins.
So this is a tough one to call. I mean, this team has won 4 games, right? So we have to chalk them up like like the Packers in the 60s or something to a degree.
No, then they are. Sorry, not to interrupt. They are in a win or die basic situation here.
Yeah,
they need this.
But they're also a veteran team, and I'm not actually citing this as a negative. They're a veteran team who had huge expectations this year, and the floor has really fallen out from them. And sometimes veteran teams can kind of cash it in. I'm actually looking at a little bit of an ugly, strange game where Palmer implodes and we gut out, but we don't do that well on offense, and we gut out something like a 17-13 victory.
Interesting.
Nice.
Interesting. I mean,
well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right, and I'm wrong.
Yeah, I might be overly pessimistic because I'm still annoyed about losing on Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Oh, I knew that was a loss.
We all kind of felt it, but
yeah,
it doesn't help.
It still stung.
Dallas. Yeah,
it still stung. Okay, so we're split down the middle. Half of us think win, half of us think loss. We shall see. Maybe that just speaks to the dichotomous nature of this season as a perhaps. But we will certainly see come this weekend. So with that, we'll put that aside. Should we chat a little bit about Kirk's contract here? That's certainly been something that people are talking their asses
and I want to
about.
bring up Steve and I I think we touched on it last show because I think this came out before last show.
We did.
The Spotrac calculation as to what the total contract could look like. But the other thing that came out today was, or maybe it was yesterday, was Adam Schefter putting out a rumor that I think he first put out a rumor the Redskins will consider tagging Kirk again. And he also has put out a rumor saying that the minimum guaranteed money Kirk is going to want is $60 million now.
Ugh,
okay, let me stop you right there. Okay?
Right in the balls.
There's a difference between money guaranteed at signing and money guaranteed period. Okay, let's make sure everybody understands this. Money guaranteed at signing means that the day they sign, he's getting the money. What all these contracts have are, if he makes it to year 2, more money becomes guaranteed. If he makes it to year 3, more money becomes guaranteed. That was the confusion when everybody was confused about Andrew Luck's big contract. He had something like, I don't have it right in front of me, something like 40-something million guaranteed at signing, but another like 30 million became guaranteed later.
Right.
And so what Schefter is talking about is probably that. I mean, they're not going to guarantee him 60 million right up front. That's insanity. That's not going to happen ever.
Okay.
So is that number that's been through? So what does that number strike you as, Steve, when you hear that as a potential structure for the contract? What's your take?
I thought that the Spotrac thing was totally wrong. I'm going to stick with what I think the Redskins want to do is stick to, something like low hundreds, 105, 110 million, but guarantee maybe between 40 and 45 million at signing, and then have another maybe 20 million guaranteed in the coming years, and structure it in such a way so they can keep the cap hit somewhere around between 20 and 22 million. And then you let the dead money trail off by year 3. So by year 3, the Redskins are kind of out of it in terms of being trapped by the contract.
Sure.
That's if we could do that, people need to get over the big number for the guarantee for the average annual value. It's going to be huge. It's going to sound awful, but if we can keep the cap hit to somewhere around between 22 and 22 million and be out of it by year 3, where we can cut him in the 3rd year, we can live with that.
So I want to get everybody's opinion, including Chris's. But Steve, give me the line that you draw in the sand. What's the number where you're not going above that for Kirk? Because just go with that first.
I think if you get above maybe 15% of the cap hit, 15% of the cap goes to Kirk. That's too much. I can't really give you a line in the sand in terms of total value necessarily because it's so scattered, But so to me, what's important are the cap hits and when we can get out. So 2 things: if the cap hit gets above 15%, that's bad. And if we're obligated and we can't cut him, meaning if the dead money exceeds the cap in year 3 and beyond, that's the line of the sand. I'd pay him almost anything. If the cap hit's massive and the dead money's massive for 2 years, we can live with that. Even if he stinks, we can live with that for 2 years. That's my line in the sand.
Okay, fair enough. So what is that? I mean, Steve's our resident expert on contracts here, and I guess I want to ask Alex and Chris, but maybe this is the question and a good way to lead off. Are we all resigned to giving him big money?
Chris,
is that just going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I am because. And I have been a bit of a Johnny come lately to Cousins. It was a slow burn, so to speak. But it is hard to go back into the quarterback hole, which is what we'd be looking at. And with the building this team has done and the learning how to win, it seems like a pretty massive step backwards to go back there. I like what Steve's saying about in terms of thinking about it in terms of percentage of the salary cap, et cetera, et cetera. Those really are the ways to think about it and not the actual numbers. And this is where you have to say, just F the Texans and Osweiler. I mean, that just was the move that screwed us for 2 years with Cousins. And then, I think the ship has sailed on a kind of Andy Dalton style, Kaepernick style contract. I think that's what we would have tried to have gotten last year. I think one thing this year's going to show is that that's not going to happen.
Where I am on it, and I've said this a few times before, I want to front load that sucker massively. If the first year that cap hit is in the 30 range, I'm actually okay with that because that would just mean that, all right, here's how I see things. This team's window is not next year. It starts in 2 years. With how we're drafting and how we're building, the window for this team is 2018, and then maybe it's a 4-year window. That would be optimistic to me.
That's probably a cautious and probably realistic estimate, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And so
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you and I are on kind of the same page. I mean, like I said, I'd pay him almost anything for 2 years.
Right.
As long as it doesn't get too outrageous, we're going to be okay with a huge cap hit for 2 years.
30 might sound high to people, but if it's 30 next year, maybe 25 the year after that, and then suddenly you're down to like something in the 20 teens, high teens,
we'll be
low
okay.
20s.
Yeah.
And we can suddenly get a bunch of franchise defensive players around him for 3 years. That's when you make your run. And I think that's
and the other thing is, and what Chris is talking about with the Dalton Kaepernick contracts is they're basically what amounts to year-to-year contracts, basically. And that ship has sailed. We're not going to do that, but we can basically get a 2-year contract. If we can get a 2-year contract out of him, in effect, where we're obligated for 2, and I think we'll be okay. That's what I would shoot for if I was Redskins management. I would not shoot for the Romo Flacco deal. That's where, that's the line in the sand. If you want a Romo deal, a Flacco deal where we're obligated, stuck with him for 4 years, I'd let him walk. I would absolutely let him walk if that's what he wants.
If he jumps up to $30 million in year 3 as opposed to
gotta let him.
Yeah, that doesn't work for the team, I think, in terms of building for when you're ready to go for a Super Bowl. You want to pay him his money in the next 2 years, and you have to make it clear to him, we are giving you a lot of money now because we think you can win us a Super Bowl in year 3 and 4 and 5.
Yeah. No, that's a great thought. And unless anybody has anything to add to that, maybe we'll save it there because we have a awesome guest coming up next week that we're probably going to discuss this at length with. Just go ahead and give you a little teaser now. Man's name is Joel Corey. You may know him from CBS Sports. This is a former sports agent who's worked for firms that have represented the likes of Shaquille O'Neal, Ronnie Lott, just to name drop a few folks, but he's a contract specialist. He's a very smart dude, and we're extremely excited about it. So Kirk will be definitely a topic of conversation there. In the meantime, we got an awesome matchup this week, so check out our website for our write-up coming probably tomorrow, and we will see you after the game for the recap.
Later.
Take care, folks.
Cool.